Hi guys, in this video I explain bubble sort. Let's start out by defining a prototype called bubble sort. It expects an array of integers and the size of the array. Now this simply sorts the elements inside this array, so there's no need to return anything, and that's why the return type is void. Let's go ahead and implement this function. Now before I can get started, let's take a look how bubble sort works. I give some random values here, and let's look how it works. So bubble sort always compares two neighboring elements. If they are in order, it doesn't do anything. If they are out of order, it swaps the two. Now if these ones are in order, so it moves on to the next neighbors, 9 and 7. These ones are out of orders, so it swaps the two. It puts 7 here and 9 here. Now it compares 9 and 4. They are out of order again, so it swaps the two. Now compares 9 and 8. They're out of order again, so it swaps the two, 8 here, 9 here. Then compares 9 and 2. They're out of order, so it puts 9 here, and 2 here, and 9 here. And last, it compares 9 and 4. So put 4 here and 9 here. Now, if we look at the array, it's still not completely sorted. So bubble sort will go over this array many times, as long as it finds at least a pair of two neighboring elements that had been swapped, that were out of order. So we just swapped a bunch, so it would continue the same process again. Compare, move on to the next, compare. They're out of order, so it swaps, and it continues to do so. So after each iteration, we have to remember if two elements have been swapped. So I create a Boolean variable here, has swapped. This is to remember if two elements were swapped. Now I want to go over it at least once, because at least I have to go over and check if they are all in order. So I use a do loop. Now in the beginning, I set has swapped to false, because I assume nothing will be swapped. And then I check the first one, check the next one, the next pair, always two pair of elements. So for this, I use a for loop, and I initialize my index to 1. So it will address the second element. And then to get the previous element, I simply subtract 1 from the index. So I minus 1 would give me a 0. That would give me the very first element. Now the condition is still a regular condition, I less than size, and I always want to increment by 1. Now I can compare the array at I minus 1 to the array at I. So array at I, initially I being 1, would give me 4. I minus 1 would give me 1 index before. Now if I could also write the index here below, let's write index. So this would be 0. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So initially I is 0. I is 1. So I minus 1 is 0. I take the value because I access the array at these two indices. And if the previous value is larger than the current one, then I would swap. In this case, it is not the case. Now I compare, I increment I by 1, so I is 2. 2 minus 1 will give me 1, and then I access these two values. They're still in order. I do it with the next ones. And then here, for example, when I is 4, I minus 1 will be 3. I access the array at these two indices, which gives me 8 and 2. And now I see 8. The previous one is larger than the current one. Now I have to swap the two. I create a temp variable for this. I assign the previous value to it. Now I assign the value to the previous index, and I assign the current one to it. So this simply moves. This basically what this does is, let's create a temp here. I assign the value at the previous index, which would be 3, and the value would be 8. So I assign 8 to my temp variable. In this statement here, I assign array at I is 4, 2 to 3. Now after I assign this, these will both be 2. And now the last statement, I do array at I equals temp. So I take my temp value here and assign it to array at index 4. So now I swap the 2. And now I can move on. The one thing I still need to do here, however, is say has swapped equals true, so that I know I swapped something. Now after I go over the entire array, I compare 4 and 8. This one again, 8 is larger than 4. Okay, so I take the previous value 8, assign it to my temp variable. Then in this statement here, I access array at I. I is now 5. So take 4, assign it to the previous value. They're both now 4. And then in the next statement, I take the temp value 8 and I assign it to the array at index 5. So this one is now 8. Now I set swap again to true. It was already true from the previous iteration. I increment I to 6. 6, there's 9. I minus 1 is 8. 8 is not larger than 9, so this is good. Now I reach the end of the for loop. And now here I have to define a condition. And I do it while I swapped something. While has swapped. So in this case, I entered the if block. Something was swapped. So it continues from the beginning. Checks 3. So it starts with I1, right? I minus 1 is 0. So it compares 3 and 4. They are in order. So it increments I to 2. I minus 1 is 1. So it compares 4 and 2. They are in order. Now compares 7 and 2. I is currently 3. Now 7, the previous one here, is larger than the current value, than 2. So it creates a temp variable, assigns 7 to the temp variable, then assigns the current value to array at index 2. So they're both now 2. And then in the next assignment, it takes the temp value and assigns it to array at index 3. And then it sets swap back to false, back to true. It was initially false. Then it goes ahead, increments I by 1. I is now 4. I minus 1 is 3. Now it compares previous value, 7, is larger than 4. So again, assigns 7 to the temp value, takes 4. And this statement here takes 4 and assigns it to the index I minus 1. They're both 4. Then takes the temp value and assigns it to array at index 7. And finally, sets has swapped to true. It was already true, so there's not really a change. Increments I to 5, compares the value at index 5, 8, to the value at I minus 1, which is 4. The previous value here, 7, is not larger than 8, so this is good. We increment I to 6. Now the value at 6 is 9. The value at I minus 1 is 8. There also 8 is not larger than 9, so this is good. So now we check here, has swapped. Yes, we did swap something. So it starts out one last time, sets has swapped to false, starts at index 1 and compares now the value at 1 to the value at I minus 1. So 3 and 4. This is good. Increments I is now 2. I minus 1 is 1. And they are somehow out of order. So we have to swap these two. After we swap, we set it to true. So we go over one more time. Something was swapped. It goes again. Starts at index 1. I minus 1 is 0. So it compares 3 to 2. Now takes 3, puts it in the temp value. Then in this assignment here takes 2, assigns it to the address at I minus 1. Let's see, 2. And then copies the temp value back to array at I. And sets has swapped to true. Now if it goes through the remaining array, nothing was swapped. But we did swap once, so this is true. Sets this one to false, and now compares 2 and 3. in order, 3 and 4 in order, 4 and 4 in order, 4, 7, 7 and 8, 8 and 9. Nothing was swapped. False is now, has swapped is still false. So this one is false, the condition is false, and it ends right there. So let's look at an example. Let's say I create an array of 5 values, or let's actually take 7. Int array size, size equals 9, 3, 1, 7, 6, 5, and 3. I hope I have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And let's print this out first. I still need to create this method. And then I call bubble sort, pass in the array, pass in the size, and then I will call print again. I need to declare the print function here, int array, pass in the size, and I implement this at the very bottom. So here I simply output the bracket, followed by the very first element in the array, which is 0. And then I use a loop starting at 1, I less than the size, I plus plus. And here I output a comma, followed by array at I. And then I output the end of the array with a bracket and a line break. So first element just outputs initially, and then after the first I always put a comma and the next element until the end. This one should be here, stream insertion operator. There we go. So let's run this program. So it outputs the array initially, right? This is the one I defined up here. So it iterated over the array, outputted it, then it passed it to bubble sort, and bubble sort always went, compared 2 elements at a time, swapped them, marked that they are swapped, and went to the array if anything was swapped, does the same process again until they are all in order, which we see here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.